Hi guys, and welcome to our second Love Gymnastics live. We'll just give it a couple of minutes to see if there is anyone gonna jump on. Oh, got one. Hello. So, guys, this week, as you have all been seeing in some of the posts and stuff, this week our live is about succeeding in stress. Now, stress, I think, is something that affects everyone, especially us as leaders and managers. And as part of my Rudy, good to have you on. So I think what I like to do is I like to take this into looking at it on three levels. So we've got a top level, which is us as managers and leaders. Then we've got it on a secondary level, which is those. Hi, Kim. Then we've got those on our coaches, because we've got those coaches have got stresses as well. And then we look at it on a gymnast level as well. I think the important thing to understand is that stress isn't always a negative. And I know it can be seen to be a negative a lot of the time, but actually stress is what helps us get through day to day. And it's just depending on when that stress becomes from being positive through to negative. So there are actually three types of stress. We've got acute stress, episodic acute stress, and then chronic stress. Chronic stress is that one which we all see as the negative stress, and that's what we want to always try and avoid. And the same with that episodic acute stress. So that's when you have acute stresses that build up over time. Hi, Carly. That build up over time, and it's lots of those acute stresses over and over and over again. And then acute stress, that's actually quite positive, and that is a stressor that comes onto us for a very short period of time, and then once that stress is gone, it then leaves and we're no longer stressed, which is actually really, really important for our gymnasts. Now, when we looking at chronic stress, just quickly go back to chronic stress, it can sometimes be a result of all sorts of things, builds up of, and I can imagine that quite a few of us, if we're not careful right now, is where we're probably going to be thinking about year end. We haven't always had the best of years. And I'm going to try and give you guys some tips to try and help cope with that stress, or certainly ways that I've found to cope with stress, because that's something that I've been dealing with for a long time. But I'm sure some of it will come back, and we'll go over a couple of times. So when we're looking at it in a business context, so we're looking at now what I would call our top level, our highest level. That is our leaders and managers. What I would say is that, in my opinion, sorry guys, I think I might have a little bit of an audio problem, but I'll try and battle through, see how it goes. Any problems, just jump up on those comments, and I'll see if I can fix it. But the manager and leaders, we have the same sort of stresses and the same sort of things as any other business needs, and so that means, are we meeting KPIs? Are we meeting the business demands? Have we got enough people coming in? Those are all stresses that can affect us, and that is no different from and what we need to do to make sure that we are helping ourselves succeed through these stressful times is to ensure that we've got a plan. We've got a plan in place that we can always go back to, and we can think, oh, okay, I'm there on my plan. I need to do this step, and this step to be able to get through this. And I think that's going to be the main point of how we can be successful, is always having that plan to go back to and to refer to, especially on the leaders and managers side of it. Now, when we going down to our next level, which will be our coaches. So those of you that are coaches, obviously I'm now back in the gym a little bit more. And I know we've probably all come up through the ranks still coaching now. We have to take on so many roles. So those roles can be from being a mentor to a confidant. You have to be a sports-specific coach. You have to be a psychologist, a manager, a friend, and we have to have in-depth knowledge of A&P to be able to provide properly for our guys. And those come with a lot of pressures. So we've got performance pressures that come from where we want to get our kids to go in competitions and results we want to have, parent pressures, expectations from ourselves as coaches, from the club and from the performer. But I think what we need to do to help us cope with those is make sure that we again have those conversations about what the expectation is. So if you guys have got an expectation of what you think your performer should be doing, then have a chat with them, have a chat with the parent, so that everyone knows. That way, no one has got any undue stress. And the less stressed we are, the more successful we can be, and the better it will be longer term. When we then are looking at, again, let's have a little look back at the business side of it, because I think that's quite closely interlinked. So when we're looking as managers to help our coaches with the expectations, how can we do that? Well, if we have got an effective job design, an effective job description, then we can make sure that our coaches know what the expectation is, and also give them enough time for the workload that we want them to do. So obviously not everyone is going to be an expert at creating programs. So sometimes we might need to give them a little bit extra time to do those programs. And that if they're worried about not being able to perform to your expectation, then guess what? That's a stressor. And the sooner we can get rid of those stressors, then the better we are going to be able to perform as a team. And so a stressor, if I haven't already mentioned it, if some of you guys that have just recently dropped on, a stressor is anything that you can perceive as being stressful or cause your body to become anxious or worried. Now, every single person's perception of a stressor is different. And the way I perceive stress is completely different to the way someone else perceives stress, and vice versa. The way that I deal with it may be completely different to how someone else deals with it. So being individual is also going to make sure that we can deal with those in the best way, and we can move forward in the best way. Now, as well as being able to identify what stress is and stresses are, there are some key things that we can all identify as physiological symptoms of stress. So obviously there are some psychological symptoms. Stress is but it fruitions itself in some physiological things. So physiological things can be including headaches. It can be tiredness, that can then lead on to depression. And then you can also, even things like having an upset stomach, then butterflies in your belly that we get, or the kids get before competition, that's due to increased stress, increased hormones within the body. So we need to be able to help those deal with them. One of the ways that we can help, especially children and gymnasts, deal with stresses is we need to be able to expose them to stress at specific and then controlled environments. So when we're looking at performance, it's important that we understand that actually stress is a really important factor to be able to get optimal performance. Because if your body is understimulated, you'll be bored and you'll be not disinterested, and it's not going to work. If you're overstimulated, then that's when we get to the breakdowns. That's when we get to almost to the chronic part of it. There's a peak part, and there's a great TED talk on it, and it's called. And I can't remember it. I'll put it in the comments later if anyone wants to jump on and have a look at that TED talk. But he talks about it's eustress. There's a peak point where we can get the best out of our individuals. So there are, I think, 3 key areas in helping our athletes manage stress. So we've got to think about managing training stress. So obviously we've got physical stresses in the gym, and we need to be able to manage that load and those stresses throughout the program, through peaks and troughs when there are competitions, when there aren't competitions. managing competition stress. It's important on this one, I think, and I think where some coaches may come unstuck a little bit is we need to not avoid it. Avoidance isn't going to help our athletes cope with those stresses. So it might be a case of you have a control event. So you have someone come in, judge the routines like they would do at competition. They have to come in their leotard, have their hair done in the right way as they would do when they go to that competition. You could go to another gym club, go to another gym, they're using different equipment. Those are all variants which we can give to the gymnasts, which make them that little bit more unfamiliar, and that causes some stress. The more times we do that and in a controlled way, when it comes to the actual event, the actual competition, they're going to be better prepared because they're going to know how that feels. They're going to know how it works. And then the other thing is which sometimes I think can be neglected, is managing the athlete's everyday stresses. So not just now, because obviously we spoke a little bit last week about, mental health of children and how it can affect them at the moment. But if you think about it, and we've got kids that are coming up to having exams, or they've got a particular, something's going on at home, that's an external stress which will affect them in the gym because it is a stressor to them, and their gymnastics may be their coping mechanism, which is brilliant, which is because we all know exercise helps relieve stress. So that's brilliant if they see that. What we want to make sure though is if they aren't coping with that very well, and we're seeing some of these physiological symptoms, maybe they're having more frequent headaches, maybe they've lost their appetite, they're telling you they're not eating, then maybe we can deload in the gym, and so it can be a bit more fun and a bit more relaxing. Now, I can probably go on about this forever, and I've just got a few notes here that I've made to make sure that I've covered everything. But I think some of my key takeaways are from this one is that every person's stress is different. So we all perceive stress in a different way. And we will make sure that to help everyone combat those stresses, we need to make sure that we help them and enable them to deal with them in different ways. Coaches, from their level, they've got so many hats that they need to wear. So if we're worried about what's going on, maybe we just need to break it down. Again, same as us managers, same as us leaders, we need to have a plan which we can go to and see where we are on our plan. And then for our gymnasts, when we're looking at gymnasts, it's not avoidance. Avoidance is going to have a negative impact long term on performance. So we need to be able to help them cope with that in a controlled environment. And that's the important thing, is the controlled environment. So a couple of things to remember, guys. Acute stress, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Episodic acute stress, we need to be aware of. Chronic stress is where we're heading to a bad zone. We need to get out. We need to worry about that. Physiological signs, headaches, depression, loss of appetite, upset stomach, they are all signs of stress. Should we avoid it? No. Should we train for it? 100%. And my gems, I suppose, from this one is, if you have a plan, then when you're in the haze and you can't see the wood through the trees, you can go back to your plan and go, okay, I've got my focus now. I can go back to that at any point. And maybe what we might do, I think might be good, is to how I plan. Maybe that's another live we can come back to is how I would plan and how I would move to that. So keep your eyes peeled, guys. Again, if you've got any questions, comments, thoughts, throw them in the comment section. I'll be keeping a track of this at all times. So if you've got any questions for me, and hopefully that's given you guys some food for thought, some things that you might be able to take away and think about, ways that you can help your athletes cope with the stress, help your coaches can manage it and manage those expectations, and hopefully we can have a stress-free time, enjoy our Christmas, and come back in 2021 and absolutely smash it. But guys, thank you very much for checking in. I've seen So many people views. Carly, Kim, Rudy, thanks very much for the comments. Really glad to see you guys in here. And remember, guys, just get in there, and we would love to hear from you. Perfect. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a good rest of your day, and hopefully that's given you some food for thought. Cheers. Bye-bye.